And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Mason J Show. Thanks so much for taking time to check out this episode. Today, we have the wonderful Sierra Levin on the podcast to talk about her experiences as a nurse and traveling around the country to visit different hospitals and really just take care of all of our citizens.
Citizens of the world.
Sierra received her Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from the University of Pennsylvania, started as a nurse in Philadelphia, and since 2018 has been on travel contracts moving around the U.S. and really just soaking up all the benefits of that occupation. So that's what we're going to jump into today. Sierra.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to California.
Thank you. Yeah, we're out in here in LA also, which is the first time I've been here. So super excited to check it out. Sierra just took me out to breakfast and got to experience all that for the first time. So it's beautiful out here. It's crazy to get to live here for right now.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's been a whirlwind, but it's beautiful out there.
So let's start. Can you break down for me kind of how your occupation in nursing started and why this is a field that kind of caught your attention?
Sure. So I kind of always knew that I wanted to go into medicine. All three of my uncles are doctors of some sort. And so that was just kind of the track I went down. And then when I got into nursing school, well, let me back up. I had my own heart surgery back in 2011. Mm-hmm. And that kind of shifted gears for me to potentially want to be a nurse versus a doctor, because obviously like my surgeon made the biggest difference for me, but the nurses made the difference in care for me. So that made the shift from medicine to nursing. And then I went to nursing school and felt like I wanted to do pediatrics, which is what I'm in now. But you have to do all the clinicals for all the different specialties when you're in there. And then you decide. A lot of people go back and forth, but I was kind of headstrong on pediatrics the whole time. And so graduated, worked in Philadelphia at the hospital where I did some of my clinicals where I had my own surgery, and then became a travel nurse as soon as I could, which is about 1.5 to 2 years after you start.
Why did pediatrics resonate with you?
I had always babysat my cousins in Baltimore growing up, and also other kids in the neighborhood and stuff like that. So I had experience there, and it's always been more fun for me in my head. You know, a lot of adult care it's not, I don't want to say it's just nursing, because it's not ever just nursing, but for me, taking care of pediatrics and taking care of kids of all ages and babies and everything is a lot of, this sounds so cliche, but it's a lot of fairy dust and magic. Mm-hmm. The kids want to get better and they want to play. Like that's the baseline when they're kids that are old enough to play or color or something like that. That's what they want to do. They want to get better. They want to go home. They want to play. Adults are a little bit harder. They don't necessarily want to play.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a different care. And for me personally,
could see that.
Less fun.
Yeah, I could see that making a lot of sense. Like, do you feel like working with kids is better for your mental health as a nurse?
Yeah, I think so.
Compared to working with adults or people that are over the age of, what would you say the age range is that you work with?
I work with anywhere from fresh out of the womb to, I think the oldest patient I had was actually in their 60s, because my specialty, so I do pediatric cardiac ICU, which is hearts, and intensive care. And a lot of, in current science and medicine, a lot of heart defects that people have can't necessarily be taken care of by adult cardiologists, adult surgeons yet, because they're congenital defects or something like that, or they're defects that they were born with and we just follow them in the pediatric world for the rest of their lives. So I've had older patients, I've had patients in their 20s and their 40s, but most of my patients are school age, teenage kids. Nice. So it can be harder than working in adults because obviously, unfortunately, not everyone survives it. But when they do, you know, we've got bubble guns and streamers, and it's a whole parade when someone gets discharged from pediatrics.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think it's incredible that you and any nurse does the job that they do, because I myself just am so far removed from that field and that occupation that I have a lot of respect and admiration for nurses and doctors, because it's just work that I could not do. I know I can't. Like I'm squeamish. Like you showed me an X-ray earlier of the heart, device that you have in your body, and while on the outside it made me like, oh, that's cool. On the inside, I was like, oh, it's so freaky.
That's funny. Well, you'll just have to gather well for that.
Yeah, and it's just like so interesting to me that some people have this like gear in them that is the care and compassion and can look past like the fluids and the grossness that comes with that field. So first and foremost, thank you for doing, that job, and to all the other nurses out there. Like we definitely need people in those positions. Why did you transition into travel nursing, and what was like the motivation to not stay in Philly and get out there and move around?
Well, I didn't know that I was going to even be working in Philly. I wanted to be a travel nurse before I went to nursing school. Mm-hmm. So I did like a medical, youth leadership forum thing in high school that was actually out here in LA. Through UCLA med school, and a lot of it was based on medicine and different kinds of doctors and going to med school and residency and all that stuff. But then there was one day where we went to the UCLA School of Nursing and spoke to nurses and other nursing students. And I remember it stuck with me so well. This one nurse came in and talked about travel nursing, but he talked about travel nursing internationally and said that he was doing what he loved as a nurse in the specialty that he loved, but he was living on the coast of Spain. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. That's what I want. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a travel bug forever because my parents are always in the travel industry, and my dad's mom was big on travel. So it kind of runs in the family to want to travel and explore and do all of that. So to be able to mesh my profession with something that I love so much was a no-brainer for me.
It's so. Hey guys, going to take a quick break from the episode just to highlight a sponsor of this season of the Mason J Show. And today we have Spencer Bangert, a loan officer with Fidelity Direct Mortgage, here to offer the listeners of my podcast some free knowledge and education on the home buying process, and hopefully to be your loan officer when it comes to your new home purchase or refinance of the current home you have. Spencer has been in the mortgage industry for over 8 years and run through the home buying process thousands and thousands of times, and that means that he is an absolute expert and will catch the little details that turn into big problems down the road. Spencer is offering a free consultation to any of my listeners to go over your credit and your home buying eligibility to see if you qualify for the home or refinance that you're looking for. All you have to do is send an email to spencer@ftmhome.com, reference the podcast, and that you're there for your consultation. Spencer is somebody that I absolutely trust because I've seen him work firsthand, and I wouldn't put a sponsor on the episode if it wasn't somebody or something that I think would really help you guys out. And I actually mean that. Thank you guys so much. Back to the episode. Spencer's NMLS ID is 1202142, and Fidelity Direct Mortgage's number is 188829. Thanks, guys. So interesting. I mean, just you saying that it runs in the family, because fun fact, Sierra and I are cousins. And like even on like in my mom's branch of the family, like I have that same travel bug, and it's funny to me how I've like got the fix for that travel bug in my own way and like the own industry that I choose to follow through, and you know, a little down the tree, you're like doing the same thing in your own branch.
Right.
So you started travel nursing in 2018.
Yes.
Where was the first destination you went to?
The first place I went was San Francisco. When I first started, I didn't really want to go anywhere where I didn't know anybody or have family, because I mean, I was scared. It's scary to drop everything that you have and that you know and pick up and move somewhere. Yeah. So it made it a little bit easier that my mom's entire side of the family lives in San Francisco. So I went there and I worked at Stanford Children's Hospital in their cardiac pediatric ICU, and then kind of blasted off from there.
What was the transition like? Because I imagine, you know, you being stationed in Philadelphia, working at the hospital there, you get to know, you know, the office and the coworkers and just that whole like workflow of the hospital. What was it like transitioning to a brand new hospital where you were kind of like the new person? You know, was that a difficult move?
It's always difficult now, having done it six or seven times. It's always difficult to get up and move, but you just have to go in with a really open mind. And I think I had talked to other people who had been at that hospital or at that unit, but years ago, and you have to take what everybody else says and what everybody else's opinion is of the unit and of the hospital with a grain of salt, because their experience isn't necessarily going to be your experience. So I had people that told me that that my head would spin because of how it works, or I wouldn't believe it working there, or just like really negative things because they had a negative experience. But I didn't let that faze me. And I had an amazing experience. I loved that unit. I loved that hospital. I made some good friends in that unit and some other travelers who I'm still friendly with today. So it's scary going in knowing that, but being open-minded about it definitely makes it easier. And as long as you're protecting your license, like, you're going to be fine.
Nice. Can you give a little information for any listeners that aren't familiar with how like the contracting goes, like how you go from the idea of, okay, let's go to San Francisco, to like finding the contract, to accepting it, and like actually getting to that destination?
A lot of people do it differently. Some people travel for the money, for the pay. Some people travel for the hospital. Some people travel for the location. Some people try to get a combination of all three, or they go where their friends are or their family are. At that time, it was my first contract. I had literally no idea where I wanted to go. I just knew I wanted to go somewhere where I knew people. And so I got set up through other travelers with their recruiters at different agencies. Neither my first two recruiters I work with anymore, but that's just how it works sometimes. And so they present you tell them your specialty, if you're looking for days, nights, or rotating shifts, if there's anything, there's any cities that stick in your mind that you want to go to. And sometimes you can tell them like, I'm not willing to take a contract for less than X amount of money. And it's a business. So you build a relationship with your recruiter and a friendship, but it's still a business. So yeah, so they offered me a bunch of different contracts across the country, and I was able to pick which one I wanted, kind of. But a lot of the places you have to have a license already in place. California is one that's really hard. It takes like, I think 6 weeks to 2 months to even get your license, and then a lot of hospitals won't even accept you.
It's a state license?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Some states are state licenses, but because I'm still a Maryland resident, I have what's called a compact license. So that allows me, for example, I worked in Texas for a year and a half, but I didn't have a Texas license. I practiced under my Maryland license. So the compact will cover you in multiple different states. It's a lot more states are getting into that because it just makes more sense. For example, like the California license, there's no reason that it needs to take 6 to 8 weeks for me to get a license to work here if I'm licensed in 4 other states.
Right.
So California is really hard, and a lot of hospitals won't accept you until you have your license in place, which is a setback and annoying, if I'm being honest. And that I got lucky that Lucille Packard accepted me without my license because it was pending. So, and then I've just kept up with it because I will not let that lapse and have to go through that again.
I bet that whole process is just
it's costly and annoying, but a lot, like once you do it, it's a lot easier from there.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then do you feel like, this, having looked back on that first transition from Philly to San Francisco, and obviously you're on to new assignments now and not living in San Francisco anymore, do you feel like that initial jump extended your skills or made you a better nurse for having like taken that leap?
Yes, 100%. Because when you become a travel nurse, you are infiltrating into a different system, and not every hospital does nursing or medicine the same way. So you learn from different doctors and different providers. You learn, especially if it's a teaching hospital, a lot of the way they do things is evidence-based research, which is a very big term in medicine world. But so the way they do things is different than the way that my hospital in Philly did things, is different than the way that my hospital in Austin did them. So you learn different ways to do the same thing. And it's not necessarily that one is better than the other, but it's just different. And you get used to different charting systems and different monitors and different protocols. So it really expands your knowledge in that way. And then even down to like the surgeries and the procedures that they do. Sometimes they do them differently at different hospitals, or they have a surgeon who's a specialist in that specific surgery at a hospital. So you learn in that way too. Yeah. And it's just skills. You build your skills like crazy and your knowledge bank like crazy as a traveler because you're exposed to all of that.
I would bet. And like, that's not exactly, but like, that's what I expected the answer to be, because like I, in my own way, have progressed like my skills so much from my ability to travel and experience the way that new people do different tasks. And it's always so interesting to me, like how, like you just said, like there's so many different ways to do one thing that, you would have never really been open to if you had just stayed in Philly or if I had just stayed in Baltimore. Do you find that when you go into new hospitals, you kind of are a teacher to the people who may have been there for a long time? Like, because obviously you've gone around and now collected all this new tech and this new way to do things that may be, unforeseen to those working at the hospital at the time. Do you find like you come in and you're in kind of like a mentor role, or?
Not necessarily. Again, you have to kind of be open-minded, because you can't say, well, this is how I did it at my old hospital, and so it must be better. It must be right. Because again, it's a lot of the stuff that they're doing at that hospital is research-based, or evidence-based, or both. So you can't come in and say, well, I did it this way at my old hospital, why don't you do it this way? Or, you just can't come in with like well, I have all this knowledge, so here, look at me. But you can't. Sometimes I've had managers, or I've had different providers or different nurses, providers being like doctors or nurse practitioners or physician's assistants, ask me, well, how did you do it other places? Or what do you think about the way we're doing it now? And then I'm always happy to say, this is how I've done it before. This is how I've seen it work. This is what I've seen not work. Or this is the dressing that I think is the best. Or this is a protocol that I think we should implement because I think it's really good for patient care, something like that. But I don't, unless it is going to be a safety concern for my patient or my license, I don't ever just like blurt in or like push in my own opinions about what I think I've seen or how I've practiced at other places.
Which seems smart.
Yeah.
Seems like a good way.
People get offended very easily that way.
Yeah, I have a small group of friends in my circle that are in the nursing industry, and just hearing stories about like the hospitals, and these are friends that are in Baltimore, and just hearing stories about like the everything they have to deal with in the hospitals. It just seems so exhausting. That's why, again, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, like the fact that you and your friends and whoever else is in the nursing industry that's listening, is so incredible that you guys subject yourself to this, and in the name of like taking care of others and
Yeah.
being the person that a lot of people need to keep them healthy.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have the different knowledge from the different areas and different hospitals and stuff like that, but it's always a constant battle of, do I tell them that I think there's a better way to do it, or does that sound, like I've got my head up my own ass?
Do you find that, like, looking at, I'm sure you have friends that have been in the travel nursing realm for longer than you have. Do you find that, like, there's a point to where you almost like graduate from the travel nurse and get to this point of knowledge of the industry that's like higher than most? I don't know if that made sense the way I asked that, but
I think I know what you mean, but
it's like you're, at least I would think that you're, no matter what, going to have more experience and knowledge from jumping around the country and going from hospital to hospital than somebody would in, had they just stayed in Philadelphia and worked at that single hospital for 8 years. Are there travel nurses that take positions or have opportunities because of their skill and expertise that you see?
Yeah,
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. I can confidently say that I definitely don't know more than a lot of the nurses that I worked with in Philly.
Sure.
Still, I think having 20, 30 years of experience in one unit in one hospital is still invaluable knowledge and experience, and that I may never reach because I'm bouncing around so much. However, because I bounce around so much, I can flex into different specialties now. So I started in pediatric cardiac ICU, but I can do general pediatric ICU. I can do NICU, which is neonatal ICU. I can do a little bit of pediatric PACU. And I know, while some of the nurses that I worked with when I started are insanely smart and know everything and can direct the doctors on how to direct patient care for that patient population, they don't know what I know about NICU and PACU. So it's not necessarily that I know more than them. It's just I know different things.
Right.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point. Like, that kind of like changed my thought a little bit while you were talking. It's like, yeah, I see what you mean. Like the consistency of staying at one place and having that like continuous momentum in the same discipline could definitely push like that expertise to like efficiency.
Yeah. Especially if it's a large hospital and a teaching hospital, the knowledge there is always renewing because of the research and stuff that's done.
Right. Whereas like moving around as a travel nurse, you kind of break that continuity sometimes. And like there's like as you said at the beginning, like learning curves of understanding the new tech and really just like the new social, the social like dynamics. That's what I was looking for. Of like the new hospitals, politics. Yeah, that's another word for it. I heard like a interesting fact that I've actually have not had the chance to talk to a nurse about. So
God.
So no, it's nothing bad. But like the fact that like Baltimore has one of the best hospitals, Johns Hopkins, in the country, and that cities that have high rates of crime and high rates of people that are being injured inside of the cities, that leads to the hospitals in those cities, rising to the top of like the status of hospitals, and that the better hospitals are positioned in cities that are more dangerous and have like more gunshot victims. Do you think that's true?
No, I don't. Really? I don't really think that has a lot of correlation. I think that's very interesting, honestly, because now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, yeah, some of the best hospitals are in some of the most dangerous cities.
Yeah.
However, I don't think that necessarily matters because, for example, the hospital that I worked in when I was in Philadelphia, we had global patients. So they weren't like kids getting gunshot wounds. I mean, yeah, we took those as well, but we got patients from the UAE, we got them from Europe, we had them from all over the place. So it had nothing really to do with the fact that like that hospital wasn't as good as it is, which, not to toot my own horn, is one of the top 2 hospitals in the country.
I'll toot it.
But yeah, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's in Philadelphia, which is a dangerous city. It has to do with the fact that the people that work there are world-renowned doctors and scientists and researchers and stuff like that.
And I'll tell you where I heard that from. It's when I was playing rugby in Baltimore, one of the teammates I had was from Ireland and had traveled here. He's a doctor and had traveled here to work at Johns Hopkins. And his take was that he made the move to Baltimore into America because where he's from in Ireland, there's 1, 2, 3 gunshots every year. And that him coming to Baltimore was such like a big push for his career because Baltimore gets, I don't know what the number is, but unfortunate amount of gunshot victims every week. So that like his take was that, oh, these hospitals are getting so many more reps in this care and procedures that would have to build up the funding and the knowledge of the doctors that are there, the same way that like you get reps in practice doing other things.
Yeah, I think that's very specific though, like to gunshot wounds and maybe like drug overdoses or any issues that come with like homelessness. But that's just such a small portion of medicine and patient care and stuff like that they couldn't possibly correlate. That's the reason that the hospital is so good, because there's so many other units and wings and divisions and stuff like that. So
look at that.
It's an interesting point of view, but I don't know that it's correct.
Well, I will stop telling everybody that, because that's usually my fun fact that now is apparently not true. So thank you. I should have called you earlier.
That's all right.
So your first assignment was in San Francisco.
Yes.
Where'd you go to after San Fran?
After San Francisco, I took a very different route, and I went to Boston, and I did pediatric PACU at Shriners, and that was an amazing experience, something that I had literally never done before. I worked in like doing post-anesthesia care for plastics and ortho. Oh my God, I just had a brain fart. Orthopedics.
Plastics.
Yeah, plastic surgery, lasers, and
on kids.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like scarring or birthmarks that parents want removed, or burns, and they need like releases or something like that of the burns because the way burns work, or post-burn care, or unfortunately sometimes like amputations and stuff like that because of electrical burns or whatever. So it was a very different field and a very different specialty than I had any kind of experience in.
Yeah, that sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, and it was kind of crazy that I got that position because I had no experience in that. And a lot of times as a traveler, you hear like you can only work in the field that you have 6 months to a year of experience in. But when I interviewed, you usually interview before a job with the manager. When I interviewed with her, I told her straight up, I said, I have no experience in this. And she said, well, you can take kids post heart surgery, right? And I said, yeah. And she said, then you're way overqualified. And I was like,
sure.
Okay. So yeah, it was nice. I went for the summer. They gave me 2 weeks of orientation, which is like practically unheard of in a traveler community. It's usually like 2 days. But they gave me 2 weeks of orientation. I learned everything that I needed to do. And they were just really, really kind. I got a lot of practice in things that I still take with me to this day. I was able to watch a lot of surgeries because they let me in the OR a lot of the time, because I think that's ultimately where I want to go. So I'm super grateful for my recruiter for getting me that position. It was awesome. And I also got to hang out with one of my cousins that lives there and train for the bike ride that I do every summer that's up there. So that was a really good assignment. And then after that, I still kept my job in Philly, so I kept having to go back every 6 weeks to work. And I also worked there during the holidays. But between when that contract ended and the holidays, I took off 2 months. I went to Australia and New Zealand and just played.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was an unreal trip.
That's one of the things about, and from hearing you talk about, like, it's the hard work you put in. It's like the long hours, the long days, the long weeks. But the fact that this occupation allows you to take those 2 months off, and we'll probably touch on this a little later in the podcast, but you're about to take 5 months off and go to Australia. Like that seems like such a good benefit that you're able to like build up that income and then take all this time off and then come right back to it. You know, is it pretty seamless when you come back?
That's the beauty, honestly, of travel nursing. And my friends and I talk about this all the time. There is an insane amount of burnout right now and compassion fatigue in the nursing community. A lot of people are leaving the bedside in droves to do literally anything else. A lot of people are going into aesthetics, but a lot of people are just done nursing. And it's really sad to see because we're already kind of in a healthcare crisis. So for the front line of the hospital to be dipping out because we're burnt out is scary. It's a scary thought. Yeah. For us as other nurses, and also to like be a patient in that hospital, it's scary because you know your care is not going to be as good if you don't have the nurse staffing, to be honest. So travel nursing allows you to kind of create your own schedule. And I could take one contract a year. I mean, that would be a little bit scary for my wallet, but I could. Yeah, I could. Probably if it's a really high paying contract. And if I extended, like I've been in this contract since January. I've taken off already 10 weeks this year. And I'm taking off 5 months next year. I couldn't do that in a staff job. No. I could never. Because
or any traditional 9 to 5.
Right. Yeah. Because you're allowed like 2 weeks vacation all year, something and like you're paid less. Yeah. So it's like in my head, I'm not as burnt out as I would be if I was a staff job. I feel like I'm also going to get blacklisted from a lot of hospitals saying this. But it's true. And honestly, if you ask any travel nurse, like you are less burnt out as a traveler because you can travel and you can take the breaks that you need to rebuild yourself and to rebuild your compassion and do self-care, honestly.
Well, and I would argue that that should be more of a normal thing for any occupation.
I agree.
For any job.
I
Like
agree.
I'm, for those listening, like I'm in the process of transitioning out of my 9 to 5 job. I used to work in mortgages, and I'm now transitioning more into what I'd rather be doing, which is the snow sports industry. And
Hell yeah.
thank you. And but like that's been my kind of epiphany. Is that the right word? Realization. Like we'll use the word epiphany.
Sure.
That's been like my epiphany, like from working the 9 to 5 for the last 4 years. It's just like I'm about to turn 25.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been doing it for 4 years and I'm burnt out.
Yeah.
Like there's people that are 30, 40, 50 that have been doing this for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Like,
and you're like, how?
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how people can subject themselves to this. And like what I said at the beginning of this rant is like, I think that more occupations should have this expectation that, like, coming from an employee, I'm going to give you 2 years of my time, and then I'm going to take some time off.
100%.
You know,
as you should.
Like it's so interesting to me that like employment contracts or employment agreements start with this, like, okay, I'm going to take a salary of $60,000 a year, and that's the end of the conversation.
Right.
Like it's not.
And how much time do I get
every
off?
2 years I need like 2 months off. Like
Yeah.
there's none of this like break time built into employment that is a necessity.
Right.
Like, I don't understand.
There's some companies, like I have a couple friends that are working for startups and tech is really good at doing this. And I don't know why the rest of the world doesn't follow suit, but tech is really good at you work and you have unlimited vacation.
Yeah.
As long as you get your work done, you got unlimited vacation.
I've noticed that.
And it's like, when I first heard that when I was a new nurse and one of my friends in tech told me that, I said, I am in the wrong field. What am I doing? And then I was like, well, I'm not in the field for the breaks and the vacation. I'm in the field to take care of people. But,
Right.
you know, then I became a travel nurse and now I can take unlimited vacation as long as I have money in my bank account.
Yeah.
But also, like, I just went to a travel nurse conference. Well, not travel nurse, travel healthcare conference in Vegas and sat in a lecture all about remote nursing. So I could be a remote nurse and live my life full time, like
How
anywhere I
does a
want.
remote nurse work?
There's a lot of different fields you can do, like research and clinical trials to like phone triage nursing for different centers and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different things. It's very researchable on like Indeed or one of those platforms. But yeah, you work from your computer anywhere. You just have specific hours to fill.
Yeah, that sounds like a better situation for those that like for me, like who wouldn't want to get as, or who couldn't handle, I should put it that way, getting as like hands-on.
Yeah.
But are those opportunities available for people going into the industry, or that's something that you need like years of experience to transition to?
I don't necessarily think you need years of experience, but I imagine you would need years at the bedside, or maybe not even years. You would need experience at the bedside to do like triage nursing on the phone or something like that. However, I've also heard that it's just a script, so I really don't know. I'd have to look more into it, to be honest.
Interesting.
You just have specific hours to fill.
Yeah, that sounds like a better situation for those that like for me, like who wouldn't want to get as, or who couldn't handle, I should put it that way, getting as like hands-on.
Yeah.
But are those opportunities available for people going into the industry, or that's something that you need like years of experience to transition to?
I don't necessarily think you need years of experience, but I imagine you would need years at the bedside, or maybe not even years. You would need experience at the bedside to do like triage nursing on the phone or something like that. However, I've also heard that it's just a script, so I really don't know. I'd have to look more into it, to be honest.
Interesting. But I think that's one of the reasons, or I should say one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the podcast was for that fact that in all the travel nurses that I've either followed on social media or have just observed, all of you seem to have like this like whimsical freedom about you that is, I really only see in the travel nursing community. That's like funny. From the outside looking in, it seems like for the most part, people are relatively happy and having opportunities to travel around and to experience like our country that I don't see like generate or what's the word? Expressed from like people in other fields. I think I sense that you guys have like a fulfillment from your job that is very evident in like your outward happiness. Like I've hung out when you were in Denver last year. I hung out with a few of your travel nurse friends while you guys were in town, and maybe it's just that select people was super nice and fun, but you know, it's
most of my friends.
It just seems like this occupation is filled with a lot of like happy, appreciative people. Would you say that that's true?
I think generally as nurses, we have like a different outlook and perspective of life just because of what we see in our day-to-day job and the amount of death we deal with, to be quite honest. But my friends and I that are travel nurses, we do joke that travel nurses are like a very specific breed of nurses.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a cheat code.
It is a cheat code.
Kind of seems like a cheat code.
It is a cheat code, but I've talked to so many people who want to travel nurse. Like
Yeah.
in theory, they look at us and they're like, "Ooh, that looks like fun. I want to do that. They're living their best life. They're having so much fun. They're doing all the things that I wish I could do." But they won't do it. And I always ask them why. They're afraid because we do live like a very unstable lifestyle. We're always moving. You know, it is hard to build lasting and strong connections with friends. It's easier now because of social media and different like apps and platforms. However, it's, you know, if you're nested in a city and you have a house and all your things and you're comfortable, like it's very hard to leave that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's similar among a lot of, or maybe I should say it's kind of just a person to person type of thing, because like I have friends, like I moved to Denver last December, you know, I've been in Chicago, and the times that I've spent other places, like there's definitely friends that I have that have stayed put where they are and expressed like the intention or the desire to move. But like you just said, like some people don't seem to have that ability to like act
Right.
on that want. And I think some people are just more habits of comfort and
100%.
creatures of habit and comfort.
Yeah.
Which absolutely, like nothing wrong with that. Like people flourish in whatever ways they do.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, I mean, that nomadic lifestyle that you guys have is very similar to like some of the other people I've had on the podcast that do like van life or just are travelers in general. It's like there's a specific type of person that can act on that desire and like flourish because of it.
Yeah. What do you think that kind of person is though? Like why I'm always so curious to see like why some of the people that like to travel but don't want to travel nurse because they love traveling. They like being nomadic for all intents and purposes, but when it comes to their life or their job, they won't.
I don't know. I think it probably has a lot to do with upbringing and like traveling as a child, because traveling is scary.
True.
Like if you're not confident in your ability to like adapt through situations or, you know, even just navigate an airport sometimes
or be alone
and and be able to like find that like enjoyment of exploring new things. I think that's a personality trait that is scary to get into.
Yeah.
And I think that holds a lot of people back. I think fear plays a big role in all of it too. And I think some people, like personally, I like to say that fear and excitement are the same emotion. You know, like
I have heard that before.
They're the same, like your body does the same thing when you're scared versus when you're excited. It's just for some reason, like we've had this like what is fear like imprinted in us as we've been growing up. So we look at it in certain situations as a scary thing, but in certain situations as a fun thing. It's super weird.
You can have both at the same time. You can be scared and excited.
Yeah, it's super weird. And it's like the same, like I see it, or I should say it's a transition, because like the feeling starts as your brain thinking it's fear, and then like you do it, and then it's the same thing, but you recognize it as excitement.
Right.
Like when you're about to.
I think it's this level of safety too.
That definitely would have something to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a fear of death if like this could go wrong.
Yeah, or not even like death. That's extreme.
Yeah. That's extreme. Well, because you know why? Because I'm thinking in my head, like my excitement activities like is snowboarding and is like doing some more high risk things outdoors where the consequences are sometimes like could be very serious. Yeah. Or like, not that I've gone skydiving, but like in those extreme adventure sports things, like those are the instances where people are terrified to do it, terrified to jump. And then you jump, and then it's like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever done. And then you're excited, but it's still like the same butterflies.
For sure.
Yeah, it's that was a long spiel. It's something I think about a lot, if you can't tell.
I do too. Yeah, I think about it a lot too, because every time I move, it's scary, but I'm also very excited because it's a whole like new adventure. So, but I think for a lot of people, they go into it and like, well, where am I going to live? How am I going to find friends? What if I don't like the hospital? And it's like, you'll just figure it out.
Paralysis by analysis.
100%.
Yeah.
I've talked to so many people who want to do it so bad. They want to travel nurse. They want to live this lifestyle. But what if? Yeah. And what if none of those things happen? What if you have an awesome time? What if you meet your best friend and you find an awesome living situation and you love the job and you don't want to leave? What if that?
What do you say is that what you say to people who, you know, are in this like paralysis zone?
Yes, but a lot of times the like what if positives don't outweigh the what if negatives in their head until they try it and they see that it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. But a lot of times you have to be, at least in this situation as a traveler, you have to be comfortable being by yourself, because you might not meet people on your first day or your first week or your first month that you really click with, that you're, you know, can be friends with. It's rare because, again, travel nurses are specific types of nurses or a strange breed. But you might not. You have to be comfortable. And also we work different schedules. So like sometimes I'll be the only one off in all of my friends, but I really want to go hiking in this one place. Got to do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
You might not have another chance. You're only here for 13 weeks most of the time. So you have to be comfortable being alone and like know how to make yourself safe as possible. But you have to be comfortable being by yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can't be by yourself, you're going to struggle. But that's also something to work on.
Yeah, it is something to work on for sure. Because there's a beauty in enjoying time alone
100%.
that isn't something that I was able to do, for all my life. Mm-hmm. It's been, as I've taken more opportunities and more ventures, I've enjoyed or realized the benefit of doing things alone and enjoying your own time and having the freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I want to go on a hike for this long. I want to sit here and enjoy like the views for this long. I just want to chill. And it's like the beauty of not having to run things past somebody, or even if it's like a good friend, even just navigate that little, hey, are you cool with this? Like, do you
want to go here for dinner? Do you want to go there for dinner?
Yeah.
Wherever the heck you want to go. Yeah.
Just do it. Yeah. I think enjoying time by yourself is a valuable skill.
Yeah.
That may hold a lot of people back not being able to do it.
100%. I agree. And I think also a lot of times, like the things that you want to do are sometimes a lot easier to do by yourself. Mm-hmm. You want to try that new restaurant down the street, but no one will go with you. No one has off. No one's around. Go by yourself. You know how easy it is to get a table for one?
Pretty fast.
Very fast. Yeah. And honestly, like a lot of times if I do that, I sit at the bar, I make friends with the bartender. Mm-hmm. Like, unless it's a slammed night, of course, but like, or the person next to me. I've met people sitting next to me who are also traveling alone.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of good can arise from doing things by yourself
that you didn't expect.
Yeah, and a lot of connections too that you weren't expecting because you're by yourself. You're not expecting to meet somebody or to talk to somebody that has a really cool story or can give you really cool recommendations for what's next in your life. Like you might not do that if you're with somebody else because you become codependent.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's jump back to the travel nursing.
Yeah, we really went on a tangent there.
Yeah, we did. It's okay. That's what the podcast is about. That's why we do it for an hour, so we have time to like go down these tangents.
Yeah.
So you went to Boston. From Boston, where did we go next?
Boston. So that was when I went to Australia and New Zealand. Mm-hmm. I was in Australia for a month. I went to New Zealand for a month, and then I got a little bit of a panic that I had to go back to America. So I went back to Australia for a week instead.
What year was this?
This was 2019, right before the pandemic.
Right? Okay, so probably good that you came back.
Ooh,
isn't that weird how that works out?
I struggle with this so much because I came back right before Thanksgiving, and I was sitting on that plane leaving Sydney, and I was stressed. I've never been stressed about leaving a place like I was stressed about leaving Sydney. I was honestly having like a little bit of a low-key panic attack about how I should get off the plane. I shouldn't be leaving. I love it there. Like I felt really at peace there. I should not go back to America yet. I'm not ready. I can't leave, like all this stuff. And then the plane took off and I was like, well,
here we go.
Here we go. And then I immediately in my head said, okay, I'm going to take one more contract and then I'm going back to Australia. That didn't happen. Then we hit 2020 and the pandemic kind of threw everyone for a loop. So
but are you happy that you like, because you would have gotten stuck in Australia.
I would have gotten stuck. The border's closed. I have a lot of friends that were from the UK that got stuck there.
Yeah.
And my anxiety as a nurse during the pandemic was the worst it's ever been in my life, especially relating to my parents and my grandma at the time being in Baltimore without me there as the family nurse. I was extremely stressed. And I was living in Texas too when it hit. So I was living in Austin, but I was living in Texas. So I couldn't really go anywhere because Texas was like red listed from a lot of places until I bought my car, and then I could essentially self-quarantine in my car. But I was so stressed out when the pandemic hit and worrying about my family and my siblings and my parents and my friends and anybody and everybody that I could worry about, I worried about. So having to take that and amplify it being in another time zone in another country would have been, I don't even know. It would have been so bad for me.
And
so
not to go down the rabbit hole of like too much. Well, I mean, we can. Like I saw like the conditions in Australia, like their government handled the lockdowns
very differently.
Like that would have been, I mean, you might not have been able to come home until like 2021 or 2022.
The borders just opened like recently this year for travel.
It's super weird how things work out like that. Like,
like
it sounded like sitting on that plane coming back to America, everything in your brain was like, okay, let's stay here. Like,
get off the plane.
But like for some reason you didn't, and you stayed, and like, thank God you did.
I know
you wouldn't have been with your family for 2 years.
I would have deteriorated as a human, probably.
That would have been rough.
But
Thank God that didn't happen.
Here
So
we
you
are.
got positioned in Texas.
Yep.
And you were there for most of the pandemic.
Yeah, so I went there. I had no idea where I wanted to go once I got back, and the pandemic hadn't hit yet. But I just said to my recruiter, I want to go somewhere warm.
Mhm.
It was December when I took this contract. I said, I just want to go somewhere warm. She was actually living in Austin at the time, and she's the only recruiter that I've ever met while on assignment. It was awesome. It was so nice to meet her. And then I went to Austin. I'd never been to Texas, let alone Austin, ever in my life, or vice versa, whatever. And I got there. My mom helped me move in, and that was the first time that I went to a city where I didn't know anybody. So I thought. But it's funny because when you start posting on social media, people start coming out of the woodwork. So it turns out I thought I knew nobody, but I actually had like a handful of friends that were there from college.
Nice.
So it ended up working out, but I was in Austin.
What were you doing? What specialty were you in?
Peds cardiac ICU. Yeah, so still hearts. So I was there, and then the pandemic hit, and then a lot of my friends that were specialized like I was lost their jobs because they started floating nurses. They started floating nurses. It's not funny. They started floating nurses from different units onto my unit, so they didn't need us as specialized anymore. So a lot of my friends that were in the same specialty were out of a job for 3 months, which is crazy because you think there's a nurse shortage. Why would they be out of a job? But it was bad during the pandemic. So I got nervous, and I didn't want to travel anywhere because I also got nervous having had heart surgery and just being scared for my own cardiac health, and also I was scared of the virus at that point, as everybody was. I didn't want to leave because I didn't want to go somewhere where I didn't know what was happening. And on my unit, we were keeping the unit very clean. So we weren't taking any COVID patients. We were putting them all in pediatric ICU.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we saw maybe 1 or 2 COVID kids during the entire pandemic on my unit, because also with cardiac issues, you get slammed by these viruses that like you or I would be okay, or a kid that doesn't have a cardiac issue might be okay. Cardiac kids get like hammered. So just
because their immune systems aren't up to where
they're just their bodies just in general are not able to, they don't have the reserve that we have to be able to fight a virus the same way. So it hits them hard. Yeah. So we tried to keep it as clean as possible. So I stayed in Texas. I kept extending. They needed nurses. So I had a job and I was relatively safe. We implemented the masks in the hospital and all of that stuff. I tested myself an insane amount of times, and then as things started to get a little bit better, I started getting the itch to travel again. That's the longest I've ever stayed in one place for a contract, was a year in Austin. And I didn't travel at all because of the pandemic. So I was really there for like a year. And I started to get such an itch to travel again that I ended up leaving at the end of December of that year and went on another contract.
Where'd you go to?
Back to San Francisco.
Back to San Francisco.
That was an accident.
Oh, yeah? Didn't want to go back there?
I love being near my family. I don't love San Francisco. I like that it's close to the beach and the mountains, and I can snowboard, I can go hiking, I can go on a boat, whatever. I like the diversity of the terrain in San Francisco, but it is just not my vibe. To each their own, not my vibe. I do have friends that love it there, and I love those friends, but it's not for me.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own sitch that makes them the most comfy.
Yeah, it ain't San Francisco.
Of the places that you have been to, where has been the best fit for you?
That's hard. Before this contract, I would have said Austin. I loved it there. I love the city. I made some of the best friends that I have in Austin, and I really love that unit. Like, it really became a home for me. But now that I'm here, my brother and sister are here, my niece and nephews are here, my friends are here. They're leaving soon, but I love LA. I hate the traffic. So I don't know. I think I'm still finding that like perfect fit of somewhere that I'm happy with the city and the people and the job.
Right. It's interesting. I feel like you've kind of hit a lot of these big cities. So I was also interested to have you on the podcast to hear like your perception of, being able to live in all these cities, although it is for a short amount of time. And, I think some could argue that you really don't get to know a place unless you've spent like a year, maybe even 2 years there.
For sure.
Because like for me, like being in Denver and being in Colorado in general, like I've been there. It'll be a year in December, and I'm like just breaking into having like friend groups set up and finding out like the cool places that I like to spend my time and this and that. So,
but it's a totally different mindset because you're living there.
Right.
Like you went to Denver and you settled there.
That's the plan.
Yeah. It's different. You work when you go somewhere and you settle there, like this is where I'm going to live. You work at a slower pace to knock out all the things that you want to do, to be a tourist in your own city.
Sure.
Here it's been different because we've been traveling all over the world, not necessarily LA. So now I'm kind of in a time crunch to do everything. But when you are settling somewhere, you're like, oh, I have 20 years here to go see that mountain or to go hike over there. When you're here for 13 weeks, you're like, I have 13 weeks to do everything that I want to do in this city, to see all the things. And that was how it was in San Francisco. One of my friends from college who'd lived there for 2 years. I was like, hey, do you have any recommendations about this place? We were going to go. Do you want to come? And he's like, I've lived here for 2 years and I literally can't tell you anything about it. And that's just how it is. If you're there for a long time, for some people. If you're there for a long time, you're there for a long time. You got all the time in the world to do all the things. If you're not, if you live in that like life is short or like I'm only here for a short period of time, you have to do everything as fast as you can.
But I think there's like a beauty to living your life that way in a sense, because like, and I can't speak for everyone. Like, you're definitely right that some people get comfortable in the place and they put off adventures because they're like, oh, I'll just do it next weekend or like this and that. But like it's interesting that you feel or you are forced to really live on like a finite time because that's how the contracts work. And, you know, I, in my own way, definitely try to take opportunities as they come and not push adventures off and 100%. Take them as soon as I can. But I think that is kind of a beautiful way to live because time is finite. Like, you mean you probably and your nursing friends know more than anyone that, you know, you could die at any time.
That's what I keep
realize
saying.
That too.
I say that all the time because like truly we've seen a lot of death and you really like tomorrow is not ever guaranteed.
No.
So if you have a really cool opportunity and it's something that you really want to do, don't say, oh, I'll do it next year. Oh, I'll do it next month. Fucking do it. Like, do it. Do whatever you have to do it. Get there. Do those things because you don't know if you're going to have that opportunity again. And I'm dealing with this right now. I'm going to be 29 in December. And there's a lot of talk about, well, we'll do that for your 30th birthday. Or maybe we'll go there for your 30th birthday. I might not be alive for my 30th birthday. I want to do it now.
Do it now.
Yeah. So, like, I hate that kind of, like, mentality of, like, well, we'll do it later. No, do it now.
Yeah.
Live your life now.
A year is so long.
Yeah.
Like, to say that you push it off for the year, that just basically... Maybe this isn't how you mean it when you say it, but what that means is like, oh, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to, you know.
Yeah, you might not.
That's how I kind of
that opportunity might not be there.
Yeah.
We could be underwater next year.
Chances are the opportunity's not going to be there.
Right.
Or new opportunities will be here.
Yeah.
Let's look at it optimistically.
Or it's just not that important of an opportunity for you.
New things are going to be in your life that you won't have time to do this anymore.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Sierra, who are you now that you weren't when you started travel nursing?
Who am I, period, is the question.
Okay.
No, just kidding.
Still figuring that one out.
Still figuring that one out. Yeah. No, I think I am... Oh, this is such a multifaceted question because when I started as a travel nurse, I was just different mentally and emotionally. Physically, I'm the same. Mentally and emotionally, very different. I started therapy as a travel nurse, and that has been one of the biggest assets for me. I think I'm a lot...
You started personal therapy?
Yeah,
okay.
mental therapy.
Yeah.
And that has helped me with my coping mechanisms a lot and my emotional ability to handle the situations that I'm in at work and outside of work a lot better. So I think I'm more, I don't want to say mentally sound because it sounds like I wasn't mentally sound before, but I am more, what is the word? More like I know myself better. Mm-hmm. I know my limits. I know my boundaries, and I respect them more for myself.
You like understand
yourself. Yeah, I understand myself a lot better, and I feel better in my own skin.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Like that's something that I've worked to understand more and more. Like, as I've understood the importance of understanding myself, like knowing what situations I do good in, what situations I don't do good in, what is weird for me, what's not weird for me. You know, who I'm willing to give myself to, who, you know,
100%. Your time is so important.
I eat, and that's what it is. Like how I can protect my time, and, you know, being selfish in like a good way is super important to understand that. And that comes into what we were talking about earlier with like being okay with being alone. Yeah. Like being alone is the only way that I understand what I actually like doing. Yeah. And sometimes like,
are you doing it for you, or are you doing it because someone else wants you to?
Right. Right. And that, I think that hits on a really key point there of like why the traveling is so good, and across the board, I've seen that my friends that travel just like expand their lives and their personalities so much. And maybe it is the fact that they get to spend so much time by themselves and they get to understand the full person, you know, or the full brain really that you have.
I think though, like the selfish thing that you touched on is very big right now, and like be selfish with your time, be selfish with your energy, and like, yes, do the things you want to do. Don't do the things that you don't want to do. Protect your energy, protect your mental health, but don't, how I see that, don't ever do that at the cost of someone else.
Yes.
So if you make a plan with someone, or if someone, you know, if you're going to go somewhere with someone and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know, it doesn't really like align with what I want to do. At that point, like, you can't commit and then back out. You know what I mean? You, like, that's selfish in a different way.
Yeah.
So
no, I that is a very important caveat, that it's like, it's hard to find the language to like properly articulate both of those in a sentence, because you're right, it is being selfish, but then there's also the notion of being a good community member and being a resource for your friends, and understanding the value of what you can bring to a group of people. Because in my life, like the best friendships that I have are with people that understand like we're in this together, and like we're here to benefit each other. You know, obviously we have to work on what we have to work on, but like the friends that I've made in Denver, those friendships are so strong because of the compassion and generosity of like the people that I surround myself with. And like from being around those people, like I've learned the value of that, and that it's almost like I'm working on myself and bettering myself so that I can then in turn come back and better the people around me.
And filling each other's cup.
Yes. Yeah. And I think maybe that's the way to articulate it.
Yeah. And you can't fill someone else's cup if yours is empty. So I actually am going to go back and retract what I said.
It's like such a balance.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't be selfish with your time and your energy, because being selfish is never a good thing. Yeah. I'm going to say protect your time and your energy. Yeah. Don't be selfish though. Yeah. That ain't nice.
Has that been hard for you to do though, as a nurse? And like, because obviously like me working in the mortgage industry is not the same at all. I realize that. It's like what you're doing. So take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but like my time working in the mortgage industry was emotionally exhausting.
Oh, sure.
Like my days, while it is just like a 9 to 5, it's like that 9 to 5 was jam packed with me sitting at the computer, making phone calls, and just like all this coordinating for something that in this instance, I really didn't care too much about. Yeah. Right. Like it's a paycheck. That job was a paycheck. But I say all that to compare it to like, I would imagine how mentally exhausted you can be after dealing with like real shit. You know, like some real shit sometimes.
Sometimes it is literal shit.
But my question is like, is it hard for you to protect your time when you're giving so much of it to your occupation?
In the beginning, yes, it was very hard. As a new nurse and as a new traveler, it was extremely hard for me to even know what that looked like or what that meant for me. Now, I think that's one of the things that like of who I am now, I think is I'm a lot better at that now because of my boundaries, and I know what they are. And my therapist would say, your ideal self and your real self, and you're trying to get from your real self to your ideal self, and what do you have to do to get there? What does it look like? How do you protect yourself to get through those steps to get to your ideal self? And one of those things is protecting your time and your energy. Don't overbook yourself. You know, make sure that you're taking time to like self-reflect and do the things that are important to you, talk to the people that are important to you. So yeah, it was, it's not so much anymore.
Yeah. Cause and I've realized like it's such a balancing act, and it's hard to teeter that line of being a good friend to yourself, being a good friend to others, but not over, how do you just put it?
Not overextending
both. Not
both,
overextending both. Yeah. And because like if you overextend too much, then you're no good to anyone.
Right, because then your cup is empty.
Yeah.
So you have to take care of yourself to fill your cup, to then be able to fill the cup of your friends, and also your friends can fill your cup at the same time.
Beautiful.
But not if they're not taking care of themselves either.
Fill them cups.
Fill those cups.
So
cup half full, always.
So from here on out, we have a couple more minutes left on the podcast. Real quick, what's in the future for you here?
Oh, in the future, so in the immediate future, I'm going to be road tripping across the country. I have to stop in Austin because I have a storage unit to empty, and then carrying on back home to Baltimore. And then from there, I will be taking off to go back to Australia and Tasmania, Singapore. And then I'm actually also in the middle of co-launching a merch brand for travel nurses called Travel Nurse.
Is that what you were wearing earlier?
That was what I was wearing earlier, but I got too hot. I had to take it off.
Nice.
Yeah, so that is launching sometime this week, actually, and relaunching. Thank you. And then next year, we're also doing a Bali trip, so that is going to be in the works. Yes, so that's going to be a lot of exciting things. Maybe taking another contract in between Australia and Bali, hopefully, because I'll probably be poor by then.
Sweet.
I should say poor.
Where can people find your content or this brand that you're launching?
So my personal Instagram is at Sierra's_adventure, and then the travel merch will be on Travel Nurse Takeover is the account.
Beautiful. And should that be available when we launch this podcast, I'll definitely have that down in the description, so any of you guys can go check out Sierra's content or the Travel Nurse Takeover merch. Would love to have you guys grab some of that from Sierra.
Part of the proceeds also from the merch are going to go to a program that we do that's a medical volunteer trip in the Dominican Republic. Beautiful. So part of that supports
Beautiful.
that.
Win-win.
Yeah, we love some philanthropy.
Nice. Is there anything else that you'd like to plug or any message
Plug.
that you'd say?
I don't think so. I think if anybody has questions on travel nursing, I'm always open to talk about it. But I would say do your research first because we get a lot of people who just message us in the travel community. How do I get started? Do some research on that first. If you have specific questions about companies or hospitals or building a community or anything like that, or you want to be a part of the community, absolutely message us. That's what we're here for. We love the community. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Well, with that, we will bring this episode to a conclusion. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Mason J Show. Sierra, thank you so much for joining us and extending your knowledge on this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Feel free to check out the full catalog of episodes I have on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your content. And reach out to either of us if you guys have any questions or feedback on the episode. And we will catch you on the next one.
Woo!
Take care.